Hello, in this lesson, we are going to be looking at the topic of offering alternate interpretations when analysing language. So, our session objectives for today are that we're going to understand how to offer alternate interpretations of language when analysing text. We are going to learn to move beyond surface level meanings to explore deeper or alternate readings, and we are going to explore how to support your interpretations with evidence and link them to the writer's intentions. So, welcome to today's session on offering alternate interpretations and multiple interpretations when analysing language. So today you're going to learn how to go beyond surface meanings, as I've said, explore different layers of meanings in a text, and by the end of the session, you'll be able to offer at least 2 interpretations for keywords or phrases and understand how to support these with evidence from the text. So why multiple interpretations, first of all? Offering multiple interpretations shows examiners that you can think critically and deeply about the text, which is the way to push you towards those top grades and the top of the mark scheme. Writers often embed different layers of meaning into their work, and your ability to uncover these layers demonstrates a sophisticated understanding. So your key question that you always want to be asking yourself, and if you've watched any of the other lessons in this series, you will have heard me say this before, but think, what else could this mean? So as an example, in Macbeth, the line fair is foul and foul is fair can be interpreted as a comment on the blurred lines between good and evil, a reflection of Macbeth's moral ambiguity where his ambition corrupts his sense of right and wrong, and foreshadowing of the deceptive nature of appearances throughout the play. So there are multiple interpretations. There are more interpretations of that line than that, but there are some suggestions there. So you can see how that short line there can be interpreted in many ways. So as a grade 8 or 9 tip, for top marks, always ask yourself, what are the different possible meanings of this word or phrase that I've selected, and explore how both a literal and metaphorical reading could apply. So moving beyond the literal then. So we want to start with the literal meaning of the word or the phrase and then move towards a deeper metaphorical or symbolic interpretation. Often a literal reading provides the foundation, but the metaphorical meaning unlocks the writer's true intentions. And we can apply this in particular to the unseen poetry. You can do it with all your text, but I would say definitely remember this for the unseen poetry, because that is really going to push you to the top marks. But always remember this when analysing language. So as an example, the word vaulting, that pre-modifying present participle adjective vaulting in vaulting ambition from Macbeth, literally refers to a leap or a jump. However, on a deeper level, it symbolises Macbeth's reckless pursuit of power, suggesting his ambition will eventually cause him to overreach and fall. And we want to think about why Shakespeare has selected that word. He could have selected many other words, but he has selected vaulting. So think about how a single word or phrase can work on both a surface level, a literal level for the grade 8 or grade 9, and on a deeper level, so the symbolic or metaphorical meaning of a particular word or phrase. And then we want to also consider the context. So historical, social, and political context can shape how we interpret language in a text. So think about how a Jacobean audience, for example, would have interpreted certain ideas differently than a modern audience. So as an example, Lady Macbeth's plea to unsex me here can be understood in different ways. In a Jacobean context, it could reflect the rejection of traditional gender roles and the expectation of women's subservience. Alternatively, it could be seen as Lady Macbeth's desire to gain masculine qualities to pursue her ruthless ambition. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, always think about how context shapes your interpretation. Weave your context into your analysis. Don't just bolt it on at the end. You are given those structures, whether it's P, whether it's peel, whether it's Peter, petal, whatever it is, you were given those structures, but you don't have to follow them rigidly. So think about where you're placing context and make sure you place context at the most appropriate point so it doesn't just seem like an afterthought. And think about how my audiences from different time periods or cultures interpret the passage, phrase, or word differently. So the importance of ambiguity. So writers often use ambiguity, that is when they are unclear, to create multiple layers of meaning. This allows for different interpretations depending on how closely we read a text. Ambiguity invites the reader to engage more deeply with the text and question characters' motivations or the writer's intentions. So texts are open to interpretation, and it's your job to place your interpretation on the text. So as an example, the character of the inspector in Inspector Calls can be interpreted in several ways: as a literal inspector sent to expose the Burling's moral failings, as a supernatural figure or moral symbol representing Priestley's socialist views, also as a device to provoke change in the characters and by extension in society. So it is ambiguous as to the function that the inspector serves, and therefore it's important that we consider all of the functions that the inspector can serve or could serve. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, look for moments of ambiguity. Look for when things are unclear in the text. If something isn't clear or is left open to interpretation, explore the different ways it could be understood. And then supporting your interpretations. So for each interpretation you offer, you must provide evidence from the text or reference the text. It doesn't have to be a quotation, but evidence from the text in some form, whether it's paraphrasing, single word quotations, as I said, a reference to the text, a long quotation, well, not too long, but a longer, precise reference to the text. Although I've just said precise, but don't panic if you get things slightly wrong. You're not going to be marked down. A top grade response will support each interpretation with specific quotations or references and will explore the significance of the language used. So as an example, in analysing the line "Out damn Spot" from Macbeth, one interpretation could be that Spot symbolises Lady Macbeth's overwhelming guilt and the repetition of damned shows her desperation. Another interpretation could be the Spot represents the psychological breakdown that she is experiencing as a result of her crimes. So both literal crimes, as in she's committed an act or supported an act of regicide, and her moral and divine crimes. And then as a grade 8 or grade 9 tip, always provide specific evidence or specific reference to support each interpretation and ensure that your analysis explains how the evidence supports your reading. And then linking to the writer's intentions. I know that I labour this point all the time, but it's because it is so important. When offering alternate interpretations, always consider how these interpretations reflect the writer's intentions. Ask yourself, why did the writer leave this ambiguous? How does this ambiguity contribute to the themes or messages of the text? And as an example, the witches in Macbeth could be interpreted in several ways. So as supernatural beings influencing Macbeth's fate, as symbols of chaos and disorder reflecting the political unrest in Scotland, and as manifestations of Macbeth's own ambition, with their predictions fueling his desire for power. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, link your interpretation back to the writer's message that you have outlined in your thesis statement, in your introduction. How do these interpretations help the writer explore themes like ambition, power, or guilt? So as an example, in Macbeth, Lady Macbeth's line, "Out damn Spot," can be interpreted in two ways. Firstly, the spot may symbolise her overwhelming guilt, as we've already said, with the repetition of damned, reflecting her recognition that she can never rid herself of the consequences of her action. Alternatively, the spot could represent the psychological toll, so the psychological consequences, impact of her crimes, suggesting her descent into madness is inevitable. Shakespeare's use of ambiguity here allows the audience to explore both the moral and psychological consequences of guilt, reinforcing the theme of moral corruption that runs throughout the play. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, ensure your paragraph offers at least two interpretations and that each interpretation is clearly supported by evidence from the text. So common pitfalls that we encounter. So only offering one interpretation. If you're pushing for those top grades, it's really important you're offering multiple interpretations. A single interpretation may limit your analysis. Always ensure at least two readings if possible. And I talk about readings here. Now, if you've seen any of the lessons on the website for literature text, you will note that in each of those lessons, we look at critical readings. So this will help you with alternate interpretations even further. So whether it's a Marxist perspective, whether it's a feminist perspective, whether it's a psychoanalytic perspective, for each chapter or scene of every text, we look at different readings. So do go and check those out if you haven't already seen those. Another pitfall that we encounter is failing to support interpretation. So it's not enough to suggest multiple interpretations. You must back them up with evidence or reference to the text, and ignoring context. So many alternate interpretations arise from the historical or social context of the text. Don't forget to consider this. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, for the highest grades, always explore why the writer left certain elements open to interpretation. What does this ambiguity add to the text? So as some final thoughts, offering alternate interpretations demonstrates a critical thinking and a deeper engagement with the text. Always ask yourself, I say this time and again, but what else could this mean? And explore multiple layers of meaning in every single passage and try it yourself. Choose a key quote from the text that you're studying, from any text that you're studying, and write a paragraph offering at least two interpretations and support each interpretation with evidence and link it to the writer's broader themes. So that brings us to the end of this lesson. If you have found it useful, be sure to check out the other free lessons, as well as the website where we have loads of lessons on every single text. Every text has a chapter by chapter or scene by scene lesson. So we go into it in so much depth. And as I said, those alternate interpretations and readings are covered within those lessons as well. And don't forget to follow us on social media.